The biggest hospital the Air Force operates on the West Coast is under scrutiny. The ABC7 News I-team has been looking into complaints about medical malpractice at Travis Hospital and a legal battle that is likely headed for the U.S. Supreme Court. The I-team's Dan Noyes now with this follow-up to an investigation he broke last night.
It was really just his personality that kind of like overtook the room, and everybody loved him.
Dean Witt's outgoing personality made him the perfect candidate for his job as an Air Force recruiter.
He wanted everybody to serve because he thought it changed his life so much, so he wanted to see that happen for others.
Noah, right now you're in sight of Mama.
He and his wife Alexis have been married for 2 years, and their second child had just been born when Dean got reassigned to Travis Air Force Base in Fairfield. He arrived ahead of his family, who stayed back in Utah, and when he started having stomach pains, the 25-year-old staff sergeant went to the base hospital to find out what was wrong.
He gave me a call and said I'm at the hospital. They found out what's wrong. It's appendicitis and going into surgery. I'll give you a call when I get out. So and that was pretty much the last time I talked to him.
Staff from David Grant Medical Center called Alexis after the operation to say that her husband was safely in recovery.
They said that the surgery itself had gone well, and that they were simply observing Dean.
So she was shocked when a secretary from the hospital called her 12 hours later at 2 o'clock in the morning to fax over papers to medically retire her husband from the Air Force.
She realized that I didn't know what was going on. She said, I don't know if anybody's told you, but your husband's not expected to live through the rest of the night.
A secretary tells you that?
Right, not someone in uniform like it's supposed to be.
An internal Air Force investigation obtained by the I-team shows what went wrong. Dean stopped breathing while he was being wheeled out of the operating room. Hospital staff then tried to revive him with a respirator designed for children. When that didn't work, a nurse anesthetist tried to intubate him, but she fed the tube into his esophagus so oxygen got pumped into his stomach instead of his lungs. His oxygen supply was cut off for 7 to 10 minutes, causing severe brain damage. His wife made the decision to take him off life support.
I just wanted him to be out of pain, and I knew based on the type of person that he was, if he couldn't express himself and be as boisterous as he was before, he wasn't going to want to stay in that place.
The California Nursing Board accused the nurse anesthetist of gross negligence over Dean's death and a similar incident she was involved in at David Grant a year earlier. On that occasion, she did not respond quickly enough when a 22-year-old airman undergoing shoulder surgery showed signs of having trouble breathing. He also died. She surrendered her license in 2007, but was allowed to keep her job as a supervisor in the children's ward at Vandenberg Air Force Base.
It was, I believe, the day after my birthday. The day I realized, my legs aren't going to come back.
Dean Witt's death is not the only recent case of major medical mistakes at David Grant. Airman Colton Reed was admitted for gallbladder surgery last July. During the operation, a surgeon accidentally cut his aorta, the main artery from the heart. He lost more than half the blood in his body, and his legs were turning blue. But doctors waited more than 8 hours to transfer him to UC Davis Medical Center, where surgeons were forced to amputate both legs to save his life.
Having someone that doesn't know how to perform the surgery, doing the surgery, and having an overseeing surgeon that doesn't know how to repair the mistakes, I just think that's a recipe for disaster.
Come on, you can do it.
Now, Colton spends at least 3 hours a day working out at this military rehabilitation center in San Antonio, learning to walk on prosthetic legs.
It's definitely a full-time job trying to learn to start walking again.
His wife, Jessica, says she misses dancing with her husband.
One of the hardest things was realizing we weren't going to be able to dance like we used to.
Daryl Keith is Reed's attorney.
I think that this would be a case of clear liability if it was in a private hospital setting with private physicians.
He says the problem for active duty service members like Reed and Witt is that they can't sue the government for medical malpractice because of a 1950 Supreme Court ruling known as the Ferries Doctrine.
Military personnel like Colton Reed cannot get fair and just compensation for a horrific medical malpractice injury that he will carry with him for the rest of his life.
Veterans rights advocate Barb Cragnati says it's created a culture where substandard medical care is standard operating procedure at military hospitals.
They know because of the Ferries Doctrine there's no accountability for what they do.
It's tragic because even a common criminal in a federal prison is allowed to sue for medical malpractice, but someone in our military is not.
But Alexis Witt is not giving up. She took her husband's case to the Ninth Circuit Federal Court in San Francisco earlier this month to challenge the ferry's doctrine.
They committed an act of malpractice, and the nurse was even, I think, disciplined afterwards for what was done. There's no question about it.
The judges said they were sympathetic.
I have great empathy for your client. I have great empathy for your client. I wish the law were otherwise.
But in this ruling, the three-judge panel dismissed the wrongful death lawsuit, writing that we are bound by precedent of the Supreme Court. Her lawyers plan to file for a rehearing at the Ninth Circuit, and if that's denied, Alexis says she'll take the case all the way to the Supreme Court. She says it's an important battle to fight for her husband and other service members who've suffered and died because of gross negligence at military hospitals.
Bringing up a case to the federal level, to the Supreme Court level, is putting on record that our family is not okay with how the military healthcare system is ran, and it needs to be changed.
The commander at David Grant refused to be interviewed or to provide anyone to speak on behalf of the hospital. If you have a tip for our next investigation, send us an email through our website, abc7news.com, or call 1-888-40-ITEAM. For the I-Team, Dan Noyes, ABC7 News.